وأقول في القرآن ما جاءت به آياته فهو الكريم المنزال وأقول قال الله جل جلاله والمصطفى الهادي ولا أتأول.
Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. This is a very short kind of impromptu session, but there's a couple of really important questions the students have asked. And I really wanted to just touch upon them as well as to ask for your questions on this specific issue. So the first thing is, if you get a Qur'an teacher, how do you combine the method that you've been taught with your Qur'an teacher? So the first rule is, when it comes to your teacher, you're not allowed to have a choice in anything. When you sit in front of a teacher, you are literally like a slave to that person. You don't have a choice. You don't have an opinion. You don't have a preferred method. You just sit down with them and say, Shaykh, whatever you think is right for me. However, it doesn't mean that you can't use the method in your own time. So what is the benefit of the Shaykh? What are you trying to get from the Shaykh? Ideally, you're trying to get two absolutely critical things from the Shaykh. Okay? Two things that is absolutely critical. The first is that before you start your hifth, you read to the Shaykh so you don't memorize wrong. It's so easy to memorize incorrectly. In fact, it's normal, even when you know how to read the Mus'haf. Like you might miss something, a ghunna, or you might miss a letter or mispronounce. So you want to read the page to the Shaykh before you start your hifth. The second thing you want to do is to get your hifth checked. No Shaykh is gonna do hifth for you, in the sense that very rarely he's gonna sit with you and memorize. Usually he's gonna say, go and memorize and come back. So when he says go and memorize, you can use the method that you have learnt, inshallah. And the method, there's more than one method. As you were taught in the first day with Shaykh Abdul Rahman, there were different methods that you could have used, right? So there's different options. But the key thing is, you really need your Shaykh is to ask politely that, Shaykh, is it possible I could read the page to you before I start my hifth? Because it will help so much. You're just reading it. And then all the mistakes that are there, he'll take it out. And then he says, okay, Shaykh, am I ready for hifth? Okay, go. He might say, come back tomorrow. He might say, go sit in the corner for an hour and come back when you're ready. But the point is, then you can choose your own method. But what you can't do is, you can't sit in front of the teacher and tell the teacher that, Shaykh, I don't like the way that you're doing it with me. I prefer the way that Shaykh Abdul Rahman told me. And because your teacher is your teacher at the end of the day, you have to trust that person. You really have to completely trust that whatever method, it might be your method is good, but maybe it doesn't suit them. Like they personally can't manage it. They don't know how to do it, or they're not comfortable with it. So that's the first thing. So if you have a Qur'an teacher, you have to follow what they want, but in your free time, you are free to do whatever you want. So you're free to strengthen your memorization using this method or whatever. But whatever your teacher tells you in the Qur'an class, you have to stick to it. There's only two things I would say. Try your very best to get out of the teacher with politeness and requests and asking. Number one is, please, can I read the page to you before I start? Because I want to make sure that I don't have mistakes. If the Shaykh says I'm busy, say, Shaykh, is there a student I could read to? Is one of your students I could read to? We heard Abu Darda used to do that with it. And it's very common. I used to do that with my Shaykh. Wallahi, Shaykh Jazallahu Khairan. Wallahi, he really helped me a lot in the Masjid al-Nabawi. The Masjid al-Nabawi has a long queue for teachers, and it's very hard to get in. And some teachers, they have you have to write your name. Whoever writes their name first on the list that day will read to the teacher. And if you came a bit late, then you won't be able to read that day. But my teacher used to never refuse anybody who came to him to read. Never. If you come to him, even if he's never seen you before, Shaykh, can I read to you? Tafaddal, sit down. But you would read to his students a lot. So he would say, come. So you today, him, go read to him. So even if your teacher says, I'm too busy to listen to your first page, just say to your teacher that, if you don't mind, Shaykh, is it possible I could read to one of the students, as I'm worried that I might have some mistakes on the page, that maybe I might memorize them wrong. So he will, inshallah ta'ala, allow you to read. So go and read to him. Go and read to him. And then you check your reading before you start. If you can't check your reading before you start, minimum, listen to it. Put Husari on, listen to it several times while reading the Mus'haf, so that you're sure you're not going to make a mistake, inshallah ta'ala. That's the issue of hifth. Now, because one of the brothers asked this very good question. If I have a teacher, how do I join between the AMAU, the method that we've learned, and how do I join between my teacher? The next question we had a lot, which I really wanted to deal with between you guys, is how do I manage AMAU and Qur'an and Arabic? So, many of you already speak Arabic, so alhamdulillah, for you, we said inshallah ta'ala, we'd like to make a separate AMAU course of, you can call it like brushing up your Arabic, and for people who speak it, but they just want to correct like their dialect or whatever, they want to just pick it up. We don't have that at the moment. But in any case, inshallah khair, I did suggest the alternative, which is that I suggested most people who speak Arabic at home, their problem is going to be Islamic books. And they're going to say, what I struggle with is Islamic books. I don't struggle with Arabic. I speak Arabic with parents all the time. But I struggle with Islamic books. So in that case, what I would suggest you do is you start by getting mutun ilmiya, that is Islamic texts that are written for very young children. Like for example, fiqh for like a 6, 7-year-old, 8-year-old, a book of aqidah that is written for like young children, and practice reading it and then go up and up and up from there. Like start with a very simple text. It's got like lots of spaces in it and lots of easy words in it. There are some on AMAU. If you want on the AMAU Arabic course, you could, if you have access to it, you could dive into it and just take the mutun in like fiqh, in aqidah. But if you don't, because no point getting access to it, just if you already speak Arabic, there's not necessarily a benefit to that. Then what I would suggest you do if you already speak Arabic is, as I said, get those mutun. If you can't find them, go and take the Medina books, the books, the topics that are not the Medina books that are printed, book 1, book 2, book 3, not those. But the books that are on the topic of aqidah and fiqh and whatever, you can download them from Fatwa Online. I remember they have them. If you go to the website, Fatwa Online, you can download the entire Medina books, like the ones they don't print. They give you in the Jamia, but they don't actually print them in the shops. And you can actually get the book of Aqidah, book of Fiqh, and just go through it, because they'll basically do the same thing for you. They'll teach you the words that you don't know that relate to Fiqh and that relate to Aqidah and relate to Tafsir and everything. They'll teach you those already. So take Fiqh book 1, Fiqh book 2, Fiqh book 3. It's just language. By the time you finish them, your Arabic will be fine for reading Islamic books, because it's just vocabulary is missing and a little bit of grammar. That's all. That's all that's missing. But people ask, how do I mix AMAU? So we want you to give priority to the Qur'an, no doubt. But if you look at what is the minimum commitment for the AMAU Academy, ideally, the minimum commitment for the AMAU Academy is 1 hour of Aqidah and 1 hour of Fiqh every week. Right? That's typically what we don't make it an enforced minimum, but it's our minimum recommended amount, is that you take 1 hour of Aqidah, i.e. that is 1 lesson of Aqidah, and 1 lesson of Fiqh every week. Don't worry that you're behind. Don't worry you haven't got past the introduction. But the goal would be, a sort of a basic minimum commitment, would be 2 hours a week. I don't think that 2 hours a week is going to get in the way of your Qur'an, inshallah ta'ala. And 2 hours a week, I think everybody can commit to taking 2 hours a week. And bear in mind that for most of the courses, the video will be much less than an hour long. It could be like 20 minutes long, 25 minutes long. Why do we say Aqidah and Fiqh? Aqidah teaches you what to believe, and Fiqh teaches you how to practice your religion properly. So it's like the essential things while you're memorizing the Qur'an. If you have a little bit more time here, you can take Aqidah, Fiqh, and like manners, or Aqidah, Fiqh, and Seerah, or Aqidah, Fiqh, and whatever. You can take a little bit more. But what's important is, it doesn't have to be daily. Like nobody made a condition on you that the academy content has to be taken every single day. It's how you can do it. Minimum is a couple of hours a week. In that time, it would be better for you to give priority to Arabic and Qur'an. Qur'an first and Arabic second. So for example, just as a rough example, you can adjust it according to your own preferences and your own abilities. Maybe you want to give 2/3 of your daily time to the Qur'an, and maybe 1/3 of your daily time to the Arabic course if you don't speak Arabic. So for example, a person, let's say they say, I'm going to give 2.5 hours a day. For example, it doesn't have to be a third. It could even be like 2 hours for Qur'an and half an hour for Arabic, or an hour and a half for Qur'an and an hour for Arabic. And you guys have seen what you can do in an hour and a half with Qur'an. You can do a lot. So for example, you go like that. With regard to how do you know exactly how much? So you need to evaluate your performance. If your performance in the Qur'an is not good enough, like you're just not getting any further, then you're going to have to increase your Qur'an. Qur'an comes first. But if you're doing fine with an hour and a half, then look at your Arabic. Is your Arabic too much a day? Or is it just too many words and you're not learning them? Cut it down, no problem. So you adjust it like that. And then maybe once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, you do the academy for now. Once you finish the Qur'an inside of 2 years or a year and a bit, then you can definitely take more of the academy at that time. Some people said, you mentioned in the academy itself, you mentioned that you only need to do 5 ajza in the first level. You need to do 5 ajza in the 5 juz in the first level. That's true. But that was more of a minimum commitment rather than for the Ashab al-Qur'an. Ashab al-Qur'an who have a goal to memorize the Qur'an, I would say do it something like that. Maybe, for example, if you've got 2 hours a day, give an hour and a half to the Qur'an, half an hour to Arabic, and then once a week, take the half an hour Arabic off, or twice a week, take the half an hour Arabic and replace it with 1 lesson of Aqeedah and 1 lesson of fiqh. That's just a rough guide. You look at your own self. If you find that the Arabic is just too much, I'm not taking the lessons in, I need to go slowly and then add some more of the other lessons. If you feel like my Qur'an is going fine and I'm happy with it, yeah, you can, like for example, if you were doing 2.5 hours, but you decide to cut it down to 2 hours so you can take a little bit more of an Arabic lesson. Arabic will help your Qur'an and Qur'an will help your Arabic. They'll go together. So just very, very quickly, because we are short on time, have any of you got any questions about this issue? How to schedule AMAU or similar to that, like issues of memorization? One more thing before I take your question. Some people said, I already started memorizing mutun. So what's your view about memorizing texts while memorizing the Qur'an? I'm very much against memorizing any text until you have finished more than 5 juz of the Qur'an. The reason is less than 5 juz, it seems to be that 5 juz is kind of like a limit. Once you pass it, it's very likely that you will memorize a lot or all of the Qur'an. When you're less than 5 ajza, it might be that you don't ever get beyond where you are. So we don't want you to get distracted. Once you get to 5 or 10, then you get to 15 and 20, it's much more likely that you will finish the Qur'an. So you can add like some time every week to memorize poetry, to memorize key texts and things like that. So what I would say is, if you started something, don't lose it. Like you started the 40 hadith of Imam al-Nawawi, don't stop it, because there's no benefit for you to have started it and then you lose it and then you have to do it again. Just continue, just give it less time. Like maybe do just maybe an hour a week or 10 minutes a day or whatever, okay? Until then. Once you've done that, don't add anything else until you get to at least 5 juz of the Qur'an. And not just 5, but you've got a program where you're adding a juz regularly. Every 2 months, every month, every 3 months, you're adding one. And you've got no doubt that Qur'an is going well. Then you can add a little bit of poetry and text and things like that, that it doesn't distract you from the Qur'an. So for me, what I would like to see for someone that I know they're not distracted is 2 conditions. Condition number 1, they reached 5 ajza of the Qur'an. They reached 5 juz. That's my first condition. The second condition is they're adding a juz on a regular basis. So it could be every 3 months, it could be every 2 months, according to the speed of memorization, but it's going. And like the next month, okay, I've done a juz and a half, 2, then I've done another one, and it's going forwards. If that's happening, then you can, if you have spare time in your timetable, you can add some points. Last thing before I take your questions is, someone might ask, I've got university, I've got studies, I've got exams. There's no doubt those things will come into play. And the answer is فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ. Do the best you can. Fear Allah as much as you can. Try not to ever lose at least your wird of the Qur'an. At least. That means your regular portion, that you don't leave it every day. We don't leave that no matter what. National disaster, exam, interview, we don't leave that portion of the Qur'an every day. So at least that. But if there's times when you maybe miss memorization one day because you've got an exam the next day, what can you do? If you couldn't do it, you couldn't do it. But one thing you'll find, memorizing the Qur'an, wallahi, it will help you so much in your secular, I don't like the word secular, let's call it worldly exams. In your worldly exams. Because let's be honest, if someone can memorize the Qur'an like that, and they know the ayah at the top of the page, and they know the ayah before and the ayah after, tell me any university degree that has even a quarter of the memorization of the Qur'an. And I've seen even medicine, even the ones that are like high end, the memorization for the entire degree doesn't even equal a quarter of the Qur'an. So you can ace your exams. Like we used to see in Kulliyat al-Hadith, I used to be shocked. Some of the students, for every exam, I used to ask him, you get good marks? He said, yeah, I just memorize everything the teacher says. Everything. Like I just memorized the entire 16 weeks of lesson. I just memorized it. I used to sit there with the teachers, the notes they've taken from the teacher, and memorize them like the Qur'an. Because once you've memorized and you start getting used to it, like you can memorize anything. So that's what Allah made easy for me to mention. Allah knows best. Wassalatu wassalamu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.